Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paul Talks Track. Today, we're going to be looking at part two of my series of looking at, each throwing event so far in 2024 and just how insane they all have been. Today, we're going to be looking at the men's and women's discus throw. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, on the men's side, we've got to start with Mikolas Alekna, obviously. So you won't see this if you look at his World Athletics page, because for some reason, I guess this meet wasn't on their calendar. But he opened his season a week before he went to Ramona and threw 71.39, I think that put him 10th all time. And then, the next week, he goes to Ramona, six throws over 70, three throws over 72, 74.35 is the new world record. Just truly one of the most insane performances in track and field history. I would vote, perhaps, it is the most insane. Maybe tied with Ryan Krauser's LA Grand Prix last year. But yeah, it was ridiculous watching it live and just seeing history of that level happen in real time was insane. And then everyone was kind of looking like, okay, so what's he going to be able to do to follow this up now? He's not going to be in the wind in Ramona anymore. What's he going to be able to do? And he goes to the Marrakesh/Rabat Diamond League a couple weeks later and wins it in 70-70 against a field that was pretty much probably going to be like at least 2/3 of the Olympic final this year. Just a stacked field. Chet and Stahl were there, and Maddie Denny, who we'll get to in a second. Just a crazy field. And he won by like 3 meters and threw 70-70 in a stadium. So everyone just shut up and acknowledge how insanely good Mikolas Alekna is at throwing discus. And then he had his fourth meet of the season a day or two ago, and he threw 68.82. Also won, also beat out Christian Chet and Daniel Stahl and Maddie Denny. He's undefeated. His worst mark is 68.82. He's insane. And he's really good, and he's really, really consistent. He is obvious. I don't want to say obviously. I think he's my gold medal favorite for Paris this year, which seems ridiculous to say just because he is, so young. And Chen Stahl are so good in championship settings. But it's not like Alekna's been bad in championship settings. He's the youngest man ever to get a discus medal at World Championships twice, with a silver in 2022 and a bronze last year. And he won European Championships in 2022 I'm pretty sure he was 19 when those happened, against Daniel Stahl and newly minted world champion at the time, Christian Chet, like 3 weeks after Worlds. So he's shown the ability to perform at championships. And now he's just showing a ridiculous level of consistency that I think he's the favorite. Right now, he's the favorite. That might change the summer moves along, but right now he is definitely the favorite. Now moving to the guy that's currently second on the world list this year, it's Alex Rose. And this part is insane because he threw at Ramona. So last year, he went 70-39, I think it was, in Ramona. And then his season's best outside of Ramona last year was, I think, like maybe 67 high. He might have hit 68 at some point. But most people were like, okay, it was just a Ramona inflated throw, whatever. And he goes back to Ramona this year, and he doesn't break 70 again. I think his best, he threw at Ramona a couple times. I want to say his best was like 68 low, but I'll double check and put that somewhere. And then he goes to this like random meet at some college in Michigan and goes 71-48. And he moves up to, I think that's 9th all time, I want to say, maybe 10th. But that's obviously an insane mark. It's like a full meter PB for him. And hitting that big of a PB when your PB was at Ramona and you throw that not at Ramona is ridiculously impressive, as if 71-48 wasn't impressive enough. And then he posts about it on Instagram. And I'm going to put a screenshot of the caption here so you can take away from it what you will. My understanding of that is he just threw 71-48 on a torn meniscus, which doesn't seem possible, but he did. So, like, okay, I mean, that's insane. My understanding of what he said in the caption is that his meniscus is torn. They opted not to go for surgery, and he's kind of just been rehabbing it and just like resting it. And then he comes out and throws one of the farthest throws in history. And he's like, since then, he's still been posting on his Instagram story, like, oh, the knee's like feeling a little bit better today. So he's definitely still like feeling stuff from having his meniscus torn. Like, I don't comprehend how that throw is possible. And it's so insane, but so cool. Can you imagine saying you became one of the 10 farthest discus throwers in history with a ligament in your knee not being complete, being in two pieces? What? That's insane. All right, moving on to Christian Chad now. He opened the season at not technically opened the season because he threw in like February in an indoor discus meet. He threw like 65 something. But he opened his outdoor season at the Doha Diamond League, threw 70-48 to take the win. Looked great. But then the week after, or 2 weeks after, whenever it was, in Marrakesh/Rabat, he threw 64-64, which finished, I think he finished in sixth, I want to say, which was his worst finish since the Doha World Championships in 2019 when he was 20. And it was also his worst mark in international competition since I think it was 2021. So it was very kind of alarming. And then he comes back, and the meet that Mikolas Alekna threw 68-82, that was a really small meet in Estonia. So I kind of just saw like the results up on Twitter. Alekna threw 68-82, and I want to say Cho is at like 68-80. So he's fine. There's nothing to worry about for Marrakesh. But I think especially as the Diamond League circuit continues to pick up, he'll get a little bit more consistent. And like he's been, having two of your first three meets of the season be at 68 mid and 70 mid is insane. But it's just with the way that Alekna's been throwing this year, it's kind of like shifted our perspective on everything and like what constitutes consistency and greatness, which is awesome. It's an awesome thing to happen. But it does kind of, you do kind of just have to refocus and tell yourself, like, hey, not everyone is going to be Mikolas Alekna, quite frankly. But all the big guys are meeting in Oslo this weekend for the Bislett Games, the Oslo Diamond League. So it should be another, at least a good data point for most of the big guys. Daniel Stahl is going to be there. His season's best right now is 68-99. That was at a really tiny meet, like a day or two before the Marrakesh Diamond League. Then he comes out and takes third in Marrakesh, throwing 67-49. It's not necessarily the strongest start he's had to a season, but it is Daniel Stahl. So I am never going to doubt him because he's Daniel Stahl. And I mean, did you see what he did in Budapest last year? Yeah. Don't doubt Daniel Stahl. He'll be fine. Matty Denny of Australia, though, talk about the season he's had. He was so close to getting on the podium in Budapest last year. And then he had a really massive day at the Prefontaine Classic last September where he beat out, I don't think Alekna was there, but he beat out Daniel Stahl and Christian Chad at least through like a meter or so PB, I think it was then. And he has just started his season out flying. He's gone 69 twice. He's gone 66 high in a meet, and he's gone 67 high twice. So he's been competing really well. He's been placing really well in some of the meets with some of the, big guys, the titans of the sport in it. And yeah, I think he has, especially if Stahl kind of doesn't necessarily pick it up like we've seen him do in the past, moving into Paris this year, I think he could definitely be, well, he's definitely going to be a contender for the podium. It's just going to be a matter of if he finishes, in fourth again behind kind of the big three. My last kind of note on men's discus so far this year is the fact that it is May 27th, the day that I'm filming this, And we have 9 men that have broken 69 meters this year. That is the most in a season in history, at least since 2001, because that is as far back as the World Athletics top lists go. But the closest we've come is, I believe it was 2022. There were 6 men that broke 69 meters for the entire season. And we have had seen 9 men break that barrier in like pretty much 2 months of like real competition. That's ridiculous. And that doesn't even include, like I said, Daniel Stahl, his PB right now is 68.99. So he's a hair off there. Former world champ Andrius Gudzius of Lithuania has kind of just started getting his season rolling. So his season's best is only like 65 something, I think. There's a couple other big guys that haven't hit 69 yet that definitely have the ability to. So, like, realistically, it might not be insane to say that we'll see the number of 69-meter throwers this year bump up over like 13 or 14, which would be well over double the amount we've seen in any other season in this century, pretty much, at least. So it's a special, special time to be a Discus fan, as if that wasn't blatantly obvious by the existence of Mikolas Alekna. Moving over to the women's side, we're going to start with Valerie Allman, who is undefeated and is just doing Valerie Allman things. Her marks in competition this year so far are 67.17, 67.93, 67.98, 69.80, 69.86, and then most recently 67.36 at pre a couple days ago. She's undefeated, and that includes 4 matchups against the majority of her main competitors, at least Jaime Perez and Lagi Desaga, although Jaime probably isn't going to be in Paris, so I don't know if you can really call her a competitor. I know Jaime was trying to get on the refugee team. I don't know if there's been any developments with that. I really hope there are, because she definitely deserved to be in Paris, as we'll get to in a second. For Valerie right now, she hasn't broken 70 yet this year, but I said she had 69.80 and 69.86. So she might as well have broken 70, and she's done what she's needed to do to win every single time. So she's going into Paris as the reigning Olympic gold medalist, and it feels like, unless if something changes, she should be going in as the favorite once again. And it's just, it's really cool the last couple years when we've seen, Lagi last year and then Bin Feng the year before have like the best day of their lives and come away with a world championship. But for Val's sake, I really hope that doesn't happen this year. If we're in kind of the same scenario where she's the clear favorite and she throws really well in the global championship and still can't come away with gold, it would be pretty cool. Just from the other person's perspective, it would be cool. But it would just be so devastating. And Valerie Allman is insane, and she's so good, and she's probably the most consistent thrower in the world right now, aside from maybe Ryan Krauser. Looking back at like all of the last like 4 years, like she's just so good every single time. And I feel like she maybe doesn't get the same respect from people that aren't necessarily in the throwing community, just because she hasn't taken the gold medal each of the last 2 years, but she deserves all of that respect and so much more. And I really hope she gets it with another gold medal this year in Paris. All right, now talking about Jaime Perez. If for those of you that aren't necessarily familiar with her story, she is Cuban. She was the 2019 world champion. And then after the 2022 World Championships in Eugene, she defected from Cuba, which is, an incredibly hard decision. It's an incredibly hard thing for anyone to do and go through. So, doing that as well, also being one of the best discus throwers in the world and having all that pressure on you, it's just an unimaginably tough situation to be in. But for everything that I've seen from Jaime, she's been handling it pretty well, and she's still competing at a very high level. She has been with Garage Strength and Coach Dane Miller up there in Pennsylvania, and everything's been working really well. Like I said, they were trying to get her on the refugee team for Paris. I don't know if that's going to happen because I haven't heard anything about her being named to that team yet, and it feels like it might be getting a little bit too late for that to happen. So we probably won't see her in Paris, but I really hope there's some way that we can because she's been really consistent on the Diamond League scene this year with like right in that like 65 to 68 meter mark. I think she's taken second in like every competition except for maybe one. Um, but so that's all fine and dandy. Then you go to the day before Mikolas Alekna broke his world record in Ramona. Jaime Perez throws 73.09 in Ramona, which is, for all intents and purposes, the clean world record. It's pretty widely agreed upon that that is true. Ninth best throw in history. It was the farthest throw in like 4 decades or something. It was just her series was really good. Not necessarily as insane as Alekna's was, but she had I think 2 more throws over 70 meters, and everything else was like 69 mid maybe. I might be misremembering. And she's definitely backed that up now. She's thrown, I think she had 68.95 somewhere, high 68s, not somewhere not with the winds of Ramona. So, she has definitely backed that up time and time again. And she is one of she's been the second best discus thrower in the world this year. And I hope she gets the chance to prove that on the global stage, even though it seems rather unlikely right now. Bin Feng, the 2022 world champion from China, has had a really strong start to her season as well. She's gone 66, and then 4 times she's hit 67 meters in competition. So it's just been pretty, that's kind of her MO. I think her PB is like 68.50 or something maybe. So she's not necessarily going to throw any like crazy big, like, whoa, that's insane. Like, no marks like that. But she is just so consistent. And then, as we saw in Eugene, she can pop the big one when she needs to, but it's not necessarily the same situation as like Val Allman, where she's doing that like every other week, pretty much. But it's still been a really strong start to the season for her. She had a really good couple really good showings in the Diamond Leagues in China, in Xiamen and Suzhou/Shanghai. So, yeah, I think it's going to be another really good season out of Bin Feng. Moving now to last year's world champion, Lagi Tasaga Collins of the U.S. There have been, I think, some concerns there. I don't necessarily know like what Lagi's training has looked like. I don't know if there might be some sort of injury or something she's dealing with. So I'm not going to judge too much, and I'm going to wait until trials to really kind of scrutinize anything. But she opened her season at 65.38, which was a really solid mark. It was the best opener of her career by far. But since then, she has really struggled particularly with some foul issues. And I think her first like 3 kind of big meets, which were the 2 Diamond Leagues in China and then LA, she only had like 3 legal throws total. I think she had like 3 out of 11 of her throws were legal throws, so like 8 fouls. And unfortunately, nobody ever like streams a feed of the discus competition. So I don't know what kind of fouls they were. Like, I don't know if they were pretty good throws and it was just little foot fouls. I don't know if they were bad throws that she just stepped out on. I don't know if they were sector fouls, but a foul is a foul in the end. So that is a little bit concerning. She had a pretty solid showing at pre. I think she threw 62 something, which is like the second best mark of her season. So she could be trending in the right direction as we get towards trials. But like I said, that's just something I'm kind of keeping an eye on right now. And I don't know if it necessarily like fully qualifies as a real point of concern yet. The final athlete that I want to touch on here is going to be Julia Tunks of Canada. Tunks is currently 17 years old. She is currently in high school. She's committed to throw at UCLA next year. And about 2 weeks ago, she went down to Ramona. She's thrown there a lot and produced some really fantastic marks there. But she's also produced some fantastic marks outside of Ramona. She threw, I think, 59 something at one of the Tucson Throws Fests in early May. But she goes back to Ramona like a week or two ago and throws 62.07. which is the second all-time mark by a Canadian. So she's not even 18 yet, almost broke her national record. It is one of the farthest throws in history by a 17-year-old. Her birthday is in the middle of July, so she doesn't qualify as a U18 athlete because you need to be at least 17 until December 31st to qualify as a U18 for 2024. But it's the 23rd all-time U20 mark. And I think like 14 of the people ahead of her were like women from communist countries in the 80s and 90s. So do with that information what you will. But it's 6207 is crazy for a 17-year-old. It would have, if she was American, it would have broken the American high school record by like 5 full feet, I believe it was. So it's just an absurd mark. I'll check the world rankings after I'm done filming because before this throw she was like 38, and the quota for the Olympics is 32. And World Athletics does have a rule where U18 throwers can't compete in the Olympics, but she's listed on the road to Paris. And like I said, she turns 18 literally like 2 weeks before the Olympics start. So I think that rule isn't applied the same way as the U18 like classification rule. So I think even though she turns 18 like 2 weeks before the Olympics start, that will count and she will be able to compete in Paris if she does end up qualifying either by the standard or her world rankings quota. And I really hope she is able to go to Paris because that would be so cool seeing we've seen some really young sprinters semi often. You look at like Sydney McLaughlin, not Lavroni then, when she went to Rio when she was 16, or you look at Ariane Knighton going to Tokyo at 17. But for a thrower, like literally just barely hitting that age cutoff that World Athletics has set, competing in the Olympics, and she's at 62 something, so she would have a decent chance at least to make it to the final. So that would be really interesting, and I really hope it happens because it would be not just interesting, it would be really cool too. All right, well, that is it for kind of the look at discus right now across the world. Isn't it insane? It's insane. Like I said, the next and last video in this series is going to combine hammer and jav because in comparison, the performances there haven't necessarily been as insane. So I don't know if each one of them would necessarily warrant their own video. But yeah, so that's going to be coming out a couple days from now. Combined hammer and jav look through pretty much the end of May. But that is all for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please follow the Instagram at Paul Sports Takes and my Twitter at PHoffMahoney. And I will see you guys next time.